Hello, everyone. My name is Cindy Belk, and I have a 12-and-a-half-year-old named Timmy who's on the autism spectrum. He also has some challenges with partial complex epilepsy and sensory processing disorder.
Hello, my name is Will Adams, and my son is Liam. He is about 12 and a half as well, and he's on the spectrum, and he's pretty great.
I'm Charlie Gale. We're a couple. Our son is Jonathan, and he's 29, and he has autism as well.
And epilepsy.
I'll just take that chair. Hi, I am Ruth Singer Strunk, and I have two adult children on the autism spectrum. One is 34, and it's weird that I qualify as the parent of the oldest kid here because I can't believe I'm there. So one is 34, and he's a young man, and my daughter is 25. They both live with autism, and they both also live with epilepsy.
Okay. Because the film is really a father-son story, I wanted to hear from the dads first. And what was your reaction to the kind of father Max was?
I mean, you know, there's a lot that a father can relate to there. That passion, and even, you know, quite frankly, the struggle, I think, that I felt, at least initially, with trying to unpack what was going on, trying to accept it. I think, you know, I saw a lot of that. I don't know that there was all right decisions there in the movie, which, you know, a lot of fathers can also relate to, right? I mean, I think that, you know, there's a lot of opinions and a lot of people trying to, you know, force children into a box. And that's a lot of what I saw within the movie. And that's a lot of what I've seen within my own life as well. And I think that allowing children to be themselves and not having to live within the box that this world has created is really what spoke to me and what I saw him experience.
Well, I found the movie very difficult to watch in about the first half because I absolutely hated the main character. I've known parents like that, fathers especially, who instead of accepting who their kids are, want them to be something else. And they feel that the best way to help them is to refuse to see who they are and what they need from them. So in the first half of the movie, I was much more sympathetic to the mother and not at all sympathetic to the father. But as the movie wore on and you could see that this was really a movie about his growth and learning, both father and son learning how to deal with each other, I felt more sympathetic towards him. But I still found parts of it very difficult to watch.
I felt that way as well. However, I also felt for Max because you could see the intergenerational trauma between his father and Max. And he simply did not know, he had no parenting skills. He did not know how to be a father. I think it was really Ezra who taught him how to be a father. And that was what was personally so touching to me. The moms can chime in here too. Did you have any feelings about the kind of father that Max was?
Oh, sorry. Totally fine. I'm really loud. You could probably hear me in the back row without the microphone. I just thought it was very moving. I just thought the portrayal and the emotion, really more than anything else for me, the movie was about the feeling that it brought out in, I find I relive a lot of things when I read books or I watch films like this. It's like sort of being there all over again. So for me, it was more like putting myself in that parent's shoes and wondering what I would do in a situation like that.
Sydney?
Well, my first thought was, who put those two together? Because they were like polar opposites, the mom and dad. But as I was watching it, one of the things that really sort of resonated with me was the fact that she was trying to go the more traditional route. This is what the doctors are recommending. This is what they say we should do. And I don't think that that was necessarily a wrong thing, because all of us who have children, we have to, at some point, say we want to make sure our kids get help. And there's so many different types of help that our kids can receive. I think for the dad, there were times when I was just like, I just really need you to stop and take him back to his mom. But it was only because there were certain aspects where he really was putting him in danger.
Right.
And so it's some of the recklessness. I'm like, when you said that, it was just kind of difficult to watch that, because it was almost like he really wanted him to be just like all of the other children. But I did also empathize with his backstory, which I was happy that they gave us something more to understand some of his motivations, because without that, it would have been really hard to figure out why he wanted this connection so bad with his son. The last thing that I would say is that when it came to just watching Max, I was happy that they didn't turn him into like a genius child.
Yeah, definitely.
They literally allowed, that was Timmy in certain scenes, some of you know Timmy. So it was Timmy in certain scenes. And so had they turned him into like a savant or something else, it may not have rang as true.
Yeah, I definitely felt this was one of the few movies that I've seen that told the truth. And like Ruth said, there were many scenes where I got very teary because it brought a lot of memories back. While we're on this topic, I wanted to ask you all a question, because what drives the plot in the story is the conflict between Max and Jenna, his wife, on how to co-parent a child on the spectrum. And I just wanted to ask you all this question. How did you see that, and how, I don't want this to be personal, but maybe there are strategies or challenges you have with your spouse, or are you always on the same page?
No. No. And for years, I helped run a parent support group in Florida for newly diagnosed, and 9 times out of 10, unfortunately, the moms sort of came out front, and it took the bull by the horns, and the dads lived a great deal of time in denial. And they were angry and furious, but the moms moved forward generally directly right away to do all the things that they knew that they had to do. And then generally the fathers came around later. And I find that relationships, the relationships that did stay together, because it's about a 50% normal divorce rate, and I think it's 80% with married couples of kids with disabilities. The couples that did stay together found that they had to work together because this is a process. And as your children get older, you learn so many varied and different things about medications, about treatments and all that, that you learn that in the end you have to come together for the sake of that child, just like this couple did, sort of in the movie. Yes, so.
Any comments? No.
Yeah, that was, you mentioned some of it was hard for you to watch, especially in the beginning of the movie. I mean, that was part of what was hard for me to watch, quite frankly, through a lot of the movie as well. I think that there was just a lot of turmoil that the child had to see and experience, and you felt that in the household. And so even just the parents not being on the same page really spoke to me. It was hard for me to watch. I think that I think that it's difficult, and I think you're right. In many of the situations that I see, that's a lot of what I see, and it's my wife is here, and I think that she's done amazing through the whole process. I mean, she has helped me and led a lot of the way through this, and with the research and with being proactive, especially in the beginning. And has led me in many of the situations through this process, and so I give her a lot of credit. And it's being a parent's hard in general, right? And in this situation, I think that we experience some things that are harder to absorb, and so I think that just communicating and be on the same page and I just think is important. And so if you're lucky enough to be one of the 20%, then I mean, what a great situation. But even for those that aren't, just being on the same page, even when they're separated, I just think is crucial. There's so many mistakes that you can make, and it's hard to always know the right decisions. But at least being on the same page is the right decision.
Yep.
I was just going to say, I can remember my older sister telling me, Cindy, there are people whose kids have challenges and they're not even on the spectrum, and she was just kind of bringing home the point that there's so many different things that kids are dealing with today and so many different issues that parents are dealing with. It just kind of helped me to come down a little bit when she would explain, there are just different kinds of situations out there. And I think for me and for my husband, it was difficult after we really started to realize that, okay, his behavior, the things that he's not doing, Timmy was a preemie. So when he came out, I was just already in fight mode because he was in the hospital and we had to go up there. And so I just sort of adapted from the time that he came out of the womb that this is what we have to do. And he did well for that first sort of year or so, and then we started to notice, okay, he's not making milestones, and those are the times when you really have to have those conversations from the very beginning to be able to say, okay, we both understand that something isn't, right here, but even with that, I do agree a lot of times it is harder for the dads because particularly if you have a son, because there's those expectations. We're going to go to the games together and we're going to do all this father-son stuff, especially if you had a good relationship with your own dad, you want to pass that on to your kid. So not to necessarily be able to do those things is very difficult. And we had a great person that kind of came on as a mentor. And one of the things that she said was, whatever he likes, that's what you do. So Timmy likes dinosaurs. So we go to the Shield Museum and give him an opportunity to see dinosaurs. Maybe one day he'll like sports, but right now it's all about,
Triceratops.
Triceratops. And and he knew all the names, the solar system, all these different things that he's, obsessed with. And it was just kind of like, okay, so my kid likes the planets. And I don't know dwarf planets, but I'm learning them from him. So you just have to kind of figure out what it is that they like and go with it. And some of the dads can kind of speak to how you dealt with the father-son thing.
Well, Karen and I were very good about co-parenting. We always discussed we always made sure we were on the same page, and we never contradicted one another. If there was a rule, that was the rule. We didn't want Jonathan looking at Karen and saying, Mom, or looking at me and saying, Dad, as if we were going to rescue him from a rule that might be more challenging for him. So we thought it was really important that we be on the same page throughout. And that's what, like you, that's what I found difficult about this, was the parents not being on the same page, and the father being obstructive through parts of it.
Yeah, and, thinking about some of the scenes in the movie that were that really resonated for me and just sort of brought me back to those earlier times. Even though, you know, we watch Max, and there's that scene where he's reading his son a book and he wants to hug him. Now, on the one hand, you could say, yeah, that's what the father needed, but Ezra couldn't give it to him. But still, as a parent, you want to have those moments with your child. And I remember when I first started reading about autism after Jonathan was diagnosed, I looked at the core deficits, social and language, and I thought, how on earth am I going to forge a relationship with him? I mean, it just was so daunting to me. So that was a scene I was moved by. I was moved by every scene with Ruby, because I bet every one of us here had a Ruby in their life. Someone who appears in our children's lives, non-judgmental, kind. They understand that sometimes our kids can't do something abruptly. You want to communicate with the horse. First step, you take a little step towards the horse so he sees you. And that kind of patience that was so beautiful. And somehow these kids perform magic for our children, and our kids are doing things we never thought they could do. Any scenes for other parents here that?
I was going to bring the same thing up. That's what spoke to me. I mean, my wife mentioned that as well. And we have a daughter. Her name is Carrington. She's 15, so she's a couple years older. And she is able to get him to do more things, try new things than my wife and I are. And so, you know, when he used the spoon, the metal spoon, which was, you know, clearly something that he did not want to do, and he was able to step out of his comfort zone. When he hugged her, you know, my daughter is able to get him to try new foods that we cannot get him to try. And so it's,
Could my son go over it?
yeah, she is great at that. So I just thought that was really well done, right? And so kind of to your point around not making him this savant that a lot of shows will do, I thought that was just a nice touch to make it really feel genuine.
Any scenes for you?
Well, again, my favorite scenes were the scenes with Ruby. That to me was the most moving material in there.
No, you were saying.
No, go ahead.
I was thinking about the Ruby scenes, and I was thinking about the fact that it really is about hopefulness. That when you see someone communicate beautifully, especially somebody who's never met, presumably these two characters were strangers, and she just took him up. It was clearly something was up, and it really, I feel moved every time I see kindness in somebody, especially people who don't know my children, and they offer that. That touches you, because you know you hope that even when you're not here, there's going to be people that are going to be around that are kind like that. Also, who's taught that child to be that kind? So you have to think that it's generational. Again, there may have been generational dysfunction, but then you saw this mother who's obviously taught her child how to be kind to other people. And so I think that was hopeful. And it kind of gives us that feeling, because it makes us feel like there's good people in the world, right? Right? And the world isn't sort of as scary sometimes when you see that.
Yeah, and I think kind and respectful.
Yeah.
I think, right, not to talk down, and you know, we find that's kind of common to get down on your knees and to talk slower instead of just to be respectful and to talk to them normally, quite frankly. And I think that if that's some of the things that's taken away from this movie for a lot of the audience that may not have exposure to you know, those with disabilities, especially on the spectrum, that would be a great thing to take away.
And you can't medicate something away every time.
Yeah.
That when they were trying to medicate away the fact that he ran out they just made an assumption. There are people who are nonverbal that have autism, they don't speak every day, and we make assumptions about what they're thinking or what they're doing or why they're doing something, and all we can do is make our best guess. And then there's people who say that kid ran out into the middle of the road and clearly he wants to kill himself, we need to medicate him. But you find out that in fact, it was a logical thought. There was a dog chasing him and he ran out to the middle of the road to get away from the dog and to warn his dad that somebody was going to do harm to him, in his mind anyway. So.
Yeah, so true.
Another line, it was just 2 lines, and it was the way Bobby Cannavale spoke them. He's defining autism, and, autism, the child's in their own world. Just the way he said, I want my child in this world. And I think every single parent, it just made me cry, because that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback on what was said earlier about the scene where he ran out. So Timmy decided to take a walk a mile away from our home, and he did this at 7. And I was frantic because he snuck out while I was in the shower. We had these security latches, and this one was loose. And he decided to take advantage and go for a walk. So I was thinking, oh my goodness, he's wandering. I'm coming out of the shower, just throwing on whatever I could, and I'm just running. And so I I called the police, and they said, yeah, we have a 4-year-old. Timmy was 7 at the time, but he was so little, they thought he was 4. And so when I showed up at the house, I said, okay, I have to calm down, because there are a couple of police and there's neighbors, and I don't want anybody to think that I've done something to my child to make him run away. So Timmy was supposed to get a haircut that day, and he was aware of that, but he also wanted to always go that particular route. We walk our neighborhood, but I would say, no, we're not going that route, because there were no sidewalks. So for months, he had been want to go this way, want to go this way. No, we're not going that way. There's no sidewalk. So Timmy was not wandering. He was literally going for a walk. And he decided, I'm going to go the way that mommy never takes me. And so he probably would have gotten to the very end of that stretch and turned around and came back. I really don't know. But what I did was I told the police officers I wanted a report, and I took Timmy to the Matthews Police Department, and I said, tell them what you did. And so Timmy had to talk to the dispatcher and tell him that, and best he could. And they were like, Timmy, yeah, you can't do that, and we just kind of turned it into a safety discussion and a lesson in safety. I was about to lose my mind. My husband came flying home. It was not a good day, okay? So I'm calm about it now, because it was 5 years ago and I've had time to come down, but it was just one of those things where I had to learn, if I was Timmy, what would I be thinking when he does this? And it really took a lot of the stress and just frustration of, why is he playing in the dirt? Or why is he doing this? Or why is he doing that? It became more about, if I was thinking that I can't express myself in this way, then maybe I would write something on the wall. Or if I couldn't, necessarily use the bathroom, but I really had to go, maybe I would be pacing back and forth or jumping up and down in the bathroom, because my body just is trying to flush itself out, And so I started to ask myself and to pray, help me to understand what he's trying to communicate. And when I would slow down long enough and say, does this make sense? Then oftentimes I would say, oh, okay, are you trying to do this?
Right.
And then you could see his face light up. I could see his face light up like, yeah, Yeah, your understanding. And so a lot of times, it's just a matter of slowing down as much as possible and saying, now, what would make sense for someone who couldn't speak?
Right. I want to open it up to the audience now. Benzine, I think you're going to be our runner here. Anybody who has a question, a comment about the film, now's the time. If anyone? Oh, be more inquisitive. All right, Ellen.
I've got one. So I'm partial to horses and like horses. And the connection in the film, that Ezra had just being drawn to the horse and actually doing the eye contact. During the last year, I read a book, I think it's called Horse Boy. Kristen Neff's son is on the spectrum, and his dad wrote a book. It's much about him, but it's all about sort of like, I don't think there's anything magical about horses, but I do really like them. And I was just wondering if any of your kids had been in any of the programs in terms of working with, and I don't know if it's horses over other animals, but I think there's something wonderful with animals and kids. But comments?
Yes, there is therapeutic horseback riding.
My son actually does that. Yeah. So one of his therapies is a horse therapy, and so it's a therapist that facilitates it. My brother actually has horses as well that he spends some time with, but he does great on the horse, and often he will start out riding it backwards but would just kind of lay down and hug it as he would ride it, and so he definitely enjoyed it. Still does.
Well, my son, Andy, when he was young, did horseback riding in Florida, and it didn't go so well, not like that. He kind of laid down flat on the horse and screamed at the top of his lungs, and, eventually he learned to sit up, and eventually he learned to enjoy, and he went and put a helmet on, so there was lots of that too. So my children, I wish my children would love animals. It would make me happy because I'd like to have a dog. But they find, I think my kids find animals these really unpredictable beings, and they move a lot. And every once in a while, my daughter will meet a dog, and you'll find she'll have this fantastic connection. And I'll say, "Let's get a dog. You want a dog?" And no, thank you. So.
Cindy, have you done anything with horses?
No, I have a friend who her son does the horse therapy. I think it's in Fort Mill or Lancaster. It's one of those two areas in South Carolina. We just have a cat named Skittles because we were trying to think about how to get a dog. The service dogs are so incredibly expensive. Most of you are aware of that. So we ended up getting this cat named Skittles, and it was a love-hate relationship. It was mostly hate initially. But he's come around, and Skittles is allowed to, I think Skittles got him a couple of times for, messing with him. But that was actually, it took almost a year before he stopped telling us to put Skittles in the garage or put Skittles in the back room. It was a work in progress. So.
I think I know that animals always seem to be the stars of every movie. We had a golden retriever, we had a DeForest, and then we had the vicious dog. But I also thought that something was very cool about this movie was the fact that it had three generations of men, the grandfather, the father, and the son. And I think we all know that father-son relationships often can be challenging. They're each other kind of fighting and bumping each other's head and challenging. And in this movie, we had not just two, but three generations of grandfather, father, and son. And there we have the autistic on the spectrum grandson who seemed to shake up dad and grandpa. And to me, that was a very moving aspect of the film. And I don't even pretend to act like you folks who are parents of kids that are challenged with the spectrum, but the reality is sometimes I'm jealous because I think you're better parents because of it, and that's what's very cool about it.
We are better parents because of it, but I'd rather be a worse parent and have a typical kid.
I just wanted to ask, how can a family member or a close friend be supportive of your children, of your families, in a way that sometimes we come into a situation where we don't fully understand, and we're trying to understand or trying to learn more. But what are some things that you might say that you've seen amongst your family members, your friends, or things of that nature that maybe you could offer to somebody that needs a little guidance or needs a little help with being able to support better?
I want to say that one of the things that I think that anyone could do would be on a holiday, let's just say Thanksgiving, invite the family to your house without expectations. So I've never seen so many lonely families in my life on holidays. I'm just being really honest.
Yeah.
They're lonely. I mean, we never go to, I have a brother who lives in Raleigh, we never go. And it's a lot of work. It's a tremendous amount of work. Now I have two, but granted, even just one very active autistic person, child, is a challenge. You can't sit and enjoy the holiday oftentimes. And so I talk to parents on holidays. I know the general public isn't aware of this, but they're sitting at home, or they're maybe driving around in their car because they have nothing to do, all the stores are closed. So invite them to your house with zero expectations, just love, and whatever that kid needs to do, if he needs to sit on the couch or stand in the corner or come to the table or sit somewhere else or eat something different or whatever it is, just make it not unusual and not different, just accept it. And the family will really, I mean, I'm speaking for myself here, but I think any family would really be grateful, so.
I think another thing that you could do if you're trying to be supportive to that family, talk to one of the parents, find out what that kid loves. Because the thing about our kids, they're very passionate about the things that they love. And I think, spend a few minutes talking to the parents on the phone. Is he interested in weather systems? And is he interested in movies or whatever? It gives you kind of a jumping off point, and they can interact ad infinitum about the things that they're interested in. So I certainly think, and you kind of follow their lead, I would say. I wouldn't, it's kid dependent. If they have difficulty processing language, I wouldn't ask 10 million questions like you might a good girlfriend or something, because they process language slower. So kind of follow their lead. You might bring, some toys or some books that are of interest to them. But I think the key thing is to tap into what they're interested in.
I think that's a great comment. I mean, certainly that's a lot of my son and phases between washing machines and blenders and motorcycles but I think that also a very good comment around the holidays, and but I would just kind of add to inviting families into your homes in general, and just being very comfortable and not trying to have to feel like you're fixing everything, in the sense that it's very difficult for us to go to friends' houses, because my son will open up their closet and go through all of their stuff. And so, having the types of friends and family that's just comfortable with that. They will let your son go through their closet and not try to fix it, and use their washing machine and do their laundry. And,
And vacuum.
Yeah, and vacuum. Yeah, he'll clean your entire house if you're interested.
So, that's funny, because I have a cousin who there's nothing wrong with her. She's just a clean freak. But the only other thing I was going to add to that is because we are, you say your son was 12, my son is 12. A lot of people have had time to digest autism and other disabilities. It unfortunately has become, I always say, almost like an epidemic. So there's so many people who have a family member or a friend who has someone who is on the spectrum or who has some other form of, it could be any number of diagnoses. And so, I mean, I can't tell you the amount of people who are dealing with their child's mental health issues. I mean, serious issues. And so I think a lot of people have become more accepting. So I know for me, it's just about being honest with people to just say, hey, just as an FYI, Timmy's on the spectrum. I don't boast that like on social media and things like that. I just kind of keep that to myself. I feel like my family knows. The people who need to know, not like the people who I was in 10th grade with, who I haven't seen in, umpteen years. So for me, it's just about being honest with people to let them know. And then also when you mentioned about what can you do in terms of them coming to your home, maybe have them come to your home on a non-holiday to where they have had an opportunity to get a little used to you, used to that environment. And then that way, when they come in, it's not, oh, this is a completely strange place for me. It's, oh, I've been here before. And then, of course, as the parents, we have certain tools that, headphones, if that's an issue, snacks. I think Timmy had a ham sandwich it was either peanut butter or a ham sandwich for this past Thanksgiving. And we just were like, okay, that's what Timmy's going to eat. And we're just going to go with the traditional route, So a lot of it is just giving them that opportunity to fill things out before it's a crowded space. That will sometimes kind of help them engage in the environment.
Anything else? So what do people think of the movie? Do we like it?
I'll ask one more question, and that is for each of the panelists here. What has your child or children taught you?
Want me to start? Yeah. Okay. That's big. I don't think is this working? No. If I turn it off? That's a big question. Oh my gosh. They've taught me that little things are extremely important. Little successes are big. Living every day the best way you can and the best way you know how is often really more important than being an overachiever. I have a list, so I could go on forever. They've taught me a lot. I feel very fortunate to be their parent. It's not easy, it's rough. We have some really hard days, but the good days are really, really good. And the successes are really, really amazing. And I don't think parents of neurotypical children could ever truly grasp what a small success is like for someone who has to try so hard. So that's pretty much it for me.
I feel the same way. With every word that Jonathan uses and learned, it was as precious as holding a newborn child for me. I think he's taught me greater empathy because I can't imagine what it's like to live in his head. Sometimes he tells me, like today, we were driving to work and he puts on Chinese music on his phone. And I said, why do you listen to that? I mean, it's very unusual music. And he said, Mom, it's healing music. And I said, what are you trying to heal? And he said, I'm trying to heal my brain. And I was very moved by that, right? So I think he's taught me patience, gratitude, empathy, and I'm amazed at his courage.
And he's also taught me sensitivity because I can be more sensitive to people around me because I want them to be sensitive to my son.
Well, first off, thank you to the gentleman in the teal shirt for the compliment. I thought that was very kind. Yeah, I think you kind of hit on the fact that there are a lot of learnings that we get, and so I think there's trends of what I've heard so far. Certainly, when I see the milestones, as we're parents and we're so focused on milestones and our child hitting them, there are some children that are able to ace their test and to go to Harvard, and quite frankly, it's not very hard for them. Where you have other children that are working so hard to be able to speak, so hard to be able to communicate, so hard to be able to do math. And, so just to be able to see that hard work that I quite frankly have not seen in a lot of adults that I see in my 12-year-old. And then I would say, just joy and prioritization in life. I think that it's good to see that reminder for us as adults where we'll prioritize these things that quite frankly are often meaningless. And to the joy that I see him while watching water blend, he is experiencing pure joy, and it's just a really nice reminder of the joys in life and to just kind of prioritize what makes you happy.
I pretty much echo everything that they've said. I'll just add to it. Timmy brought out the advocacy in me to want to help other parents.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm not a child advocate, but I'm a parent advocate. So for me, it's all about how can I share resources with parents so that because there wasn't a checklist or a guidebook that I was given, I'm going to make sure if I can pass along whatever information, then that's what I'm going to do. I think the other thing that Timmy has taught me is you can't worry about what other people will think. If he's having a moment in the Dollar Tree, he's having a moment in the Dollar Tree. We're just going to get through it the best we can because that's a big deal for Timmy. It's not, as you were saying, prioritizing. If I say, Timmy, do you want to go to Food Lion? Or sometimes when he's leaving the friendship circle, he'll be like, going to Whole Foods? Those are like really big deal. That's a big deal for him. But I've heard my husband say, one of the things that I am appreciative of is the fact that they're okay. It's us. We have to get okay. A lot of times he's like, when I think about it, it's like, Timmy, what do you want, for the holidays? What do you want for Christmas? And he could just come up with something so simplistic. And then you think about all the other parents that are out there beating their heads against the wall trying to get their kids all of this expensive stuff. And Timmy is okay with, dwarf planets. So, again, I go back to you step back and you have to look at the big picture, which includes, while, there are challenges and we accept that this is where he is, it doesn't mean that this is as far as he's going to go. And if he's happy in his life, and Timmy's a pretty happy kid, then whatever that happiness is for him, then I'm okay with it. I just had to kind of get out of that thinking of, well, what is everybody else going to say? What are they going to do? You just can't do that anymore. And that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned from my son is, who cares?
Thank you.
Thank you.
There was another touch in the film that I really liked at the end when Ezra's going to go to school and he's going to do a book report on To Whom the Bell Tolls. And that was very deliberate, I know, on the writer's part. You know, I don't know, it's based on a John Donne poem from the 17th century. And it starts out, you might know the first line, "No man is an island," and the whole idea that we're all connected. The bells toll, not just for one person, for all of us. And I want to thank you for coming out tonight and being part of our community and family. Thank you.